Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen Xer, and right over there is John, our resident Millennial. John, how are
That
you
would be
doing
me.
tonight?
Fantastic, of course, as always.
Just
Never changes.
fantastic tonight?
Not fan fucking tastic,
Ooh, I see.
just fantastic. Yeah,
Just fantastic. Well, if that's all
absolutely.
the fantastic you have for us, I mean, that's what we'll have to deal with. Hey, how was your weekend, John? Did you have a fun and
Oh,
exciting weekend?
dude,
I
you know I did.
I'll will then never mind. I'll talk to you about that in a moment. Because I know what you're going to say, and it's going to be
Yes.
it's just going to be filled with alcohol, booze related stories of wild
Yeah,
nights
not.
of madness and mayhem and
I would say just alcohol, not booze. I didn't want to go both ways this time.
right.
You know.
Hey, folks, welcome to the show. If you are just joining us, which is kind of how it would be because this is the start of the show, make sure and hit the like button.
Good
Hit
job.
if you haven't hit that subscribe button. Hit your notification button. Make sure that you're finding out when we're on and when we're going live because you never know when we're going to drop in. Except on
That's
Monday
right.
nights and Friday nights, you always know we're going to drop in on those. But John, have we got anything going on in the near future? I have one minor thing that got to put out there, but
Okay. Well, other than your thing, no, we're still working on getting some guests. I want to talk to RRC, see if he wants to come on and hang out with us again.
I like
But
that guy.
yeah, he's a fun guy, and we'll probably try and get some other people on. But we need you guys out there to give us suggestions and to try and help us out getting people on. That
Yeah,
would be a lot of fun.
yeah. Hey,
Your favorite people could be on this show if
right?
you just tried hard enough.
We got Seawall showing up. Yeah,
Yes.
he heard
He
rumors
wants to
about.
see my sword.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Calm the
It's a
fuck
little
down.
gay.
Hey, listen, John. I'm gonna let you know and let the folks out there know. Show probably maybe a little bit different this Friday.
Yes.
You may be co-hosting. I believe Ed said he was gonna step up to the plate.
Yeah.
There's a good possibility that I will not be available. I'm hoping to be in recovery from a minor medical procedure, and that is going to leave an open slot here. But I'm going to try and get you guys set up. Make sure that
I
you
like
guys
open
can run it.
slots.
Make sure you guys can run a stream on here and talk some smack. And I'm sure it'll just be 2 hours of why Ed should
Making fun of the boomer.
replace me, right? Uh,
Yep.
yeah. Outside of that, um, we're going to talk a little. I figured tonight would be a good night. We have Virginia popped off today. We had everything going on there.
Yes.
So I want to talk about that some. But let's go ahead and let's take a couple of minutes and let you gush
Yeah.
about your fun and exciting day yesterday. And
Yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. It was me and Midget B went with us, and um, Cameron from the chat was there as well. You saw him in the Halloween charity show at the beginning. He was there too. And my sister was there, which was nice to see. That she showed up, and she actually bought a like a little wooden flute. It's kind of cute because she's always been kind of like musical and stuff. She played piano for a long time, and so she thought that was a good idea to spend $40 on that. But I can't make fun of her because I spent some money on this guy right here. This guy. Look at this. Yes. Just absolutely beautiful. Yeah, this is my arming sword. I just got it yesterday. I like the scabbard too. It's wooden, but it's wrapped in like it's I don't know if
eel
it's real
skin,
leather.
eel skin.
It's gotta be because it smells like leather though.
Yeah, a lot
Slightly.
of a lot of swords that I see, because I like to, look through the catalogs and stuff, and occasionally buy one. But a lot of them are using. I want it not eel skin, but race. Is it ray skin?
Ray skin.
Yeah, something. I believe maybe it is manta ray or something like that. But it's something fishy. But that it has the
Yeah,
same texture and feel of leather.
yeah, yeah. It absolutely does. Like it feels like leather. It's got the stitching right here. It's let's see. Yeah, I don't know. It's probably
Replete with the
I don't know.
Crusader's cross on the hilt. Yes.
No, that's not the Crusaders
Is it
cross.
not?
No,
Okay.
not quite.
I
Not
gotcha. It
quite.
doesn't have the four crosses on it, so.
Right. It was
And I didn't.
actually
I couldn't. Because you were moving it, I couldn't see that
oh
they were more curved out as opposed to. Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I forget what the guy's name was, but some guy actually stopped me while I was carrying it around and asked me where I got it. I told him which tent it was, and he goes, "Oh, okay, because that's the cross on it is the cross for my family." And I forget again. I forget what the name was. But yeah, he was excited about it, and I was like, "Oh, I have no idea. I just thought it was a cool sword. Like I had no idea what the cross was." And then it's got little handle here, so you can wear it on your back, which is kind of cool.
Did you just call that a handle? Oh my God!
It's got a
You
handle.
don't have any right to hold a sword. Put it down. I can't believe you
Fuck
just
off.
called it a handle.
It is.
No.
Got a little back strap, if you will.
There you go. Carrying strap at best. Yeah.
Whatever. I don't have a frog to put it in, but I should get one though. I'm thinking about getting one so you can hold it, wear it at the waist.
Welcome to the
But
welcome to the show, Ron Helton. He's
hey,
wondering
Ron
if
Helton.
you're going to be shaving with that.
No. Does it look like I'm going to be shaving? No, I will not be.
We are eventually gonna have a charity stream in which you do. You know that, right?
Well, that's up to these people out there
You
whether
know
or
it.
not that
You
happens.
know what, and you know which one it's going to be. It's going to be the next one
Which
that we.
one?
It's going to be the next 12-hour charity stream that we do, and when we do, somebody is going to finally think, third time's the charm.
That's
I'm
true.
tapping into my
Although we
savings.
have had three
They're
though,
going to tap. Well, we haven't had
not
12
three.
hours. We've only had two
A
12 hours.
2 point sling says Seawall. Look at him knowing everything. Well, you know what it is, Seawall? It's something for me to put it on my back. But you can't draw from the back, unfortunately. That would be really cool. But yeah, I'm very excited about it. You'll see it in the background back there from here on out. Or I guess from the next episode on out. So that'll be cool. Um,
Because it's basically a paperweight.
yeah, it's a big paperweight. It's like a 5 to 7 pound paperweight. Um, but I also put up a video last night of two people sparring with sabers, and that was a lot of fun. It was really cool because I mean, first of all, you can hear me and Midget B talking in the background, and then you can hear the bagpipes off to the side playing Scotland the Brave, which is kind of cool, like timing. Which I mean, we heard that song like 5 or 6 times,
Is
that
that all?
day. I mean, yeah, and yeah, I mean they played other stuff, but for the most part, that was the one being played. And so I mean that was cool. So make sure you go and check that video out. And then after that, I should be getting from Midget B because he's the one who recorded it. Me doing archery over there. So there should be 2 videos of that coming out in the next day or so. So look for that too.
Yeah, it was funny. I did talk to my wife yesterday, because you had said something about us coming out there, and I
Yeah.
told her that you had invited us to it, and I told her what the festival was, and so we got to have of course, her Irish kicked in, and
Hmm.
she had a few choice things to say about Scots and, and their dresses. And
Right.
she's like, no, no. I don't
Well,
want.
does she not know that the Irish wear kilts as well?
Well, yeah, yeah, but
Yeah, well,
it's just a point of
yeah,
it's just a point that she wanted to play on. I find
yeah, because
I have to say I find the kilt very amusing. I do.
the Irish actually gave the kilt to the Scots about 800 years ago, and they still don't get the joke.
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
I was even looking at it, I was like, why in the hell did that start? What was because kilts used to be they used to be a longer piece, right? And they were worn as part of a uniform adornment, that kind of thing. It wasn't. Now it's just ceremonial remembrance, and they shortened it up over the years, right? So because it used
Yeah.
to be down towards your ankle, like all the way down to your ankles.
Yeah.
But I was
Well,
telling
you
my
gotta
wife.
wear shorts sometimes. It gets hot.
I was telling my wife. I said, I'll tell you exactly why they wear kilts. It's because after they eat that haggis, they don't need to have to worry about the trouble of pulling down pants and underwear when they gotta stop and take a shit from all that crap they're eating.
No, dude, it's so sheep. Because no, it's because sheep can hear a zipper.
Yeah, I've heard
That's why they
that one,
wear a
but
kilt.
but that one,
Yeah.
that's that goes back to the why in the Midwest in Oklahoma where I was growing up, it was why do you wear overalls, because overalls had a button fly, they would button
Hmm.
in the front. Why do you wear overalls? So because sheep can hear a zipper.
Right.
um, but yeah, no, it was probably fun, but it
And
sounds
Steve
like
Wall's asking if I christened the blade with the blood of a furry. No comment. I'm not going to admit to anything on live on the air. So, so there's that. And then Cult Bear is saying thank you for your service. I'm not sure what we did, but I suppose you're welcome. The second protects the first. It does. That's true. And so kilts are the OG miniskirt. Yeah, they're the OG skirt.
welcome to the show, Colt Bear. Good to have you around.
Yes.
So let's get into a little jibber jabber about Virginia. So you were working today, so you've got an excuse. I know you said you were following by ear. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Through
Yeah, I
the
was
other.
listening to both Let's Be Frank and the one that RRC was doing.
Yeah, and
So I listened to those back and forth.
thank you for your cervix. That's right, Henry. Thank you for your cervix link.
Absolutely. Anytime.
And speaking of, let's be frank, that's who I was watching today. Our buddy Stephen Ignoramus from Freedom Scoop had tapped into Let's Be Frank. He went out to Virginia to be a man on the street, so they were tapping into him for a little bit of on the street live streaming from his mobile. If you look below, there is a link. I added Let's Be Frank's YouTube link into our description so you can jump on and you can find that video from today if you want. It's about 4+ hours long. And it was they were all over the place. They were you were able to see what was going on and really get a feel for it. I will tell you this, John. Much ado about nothing. Much ado
Yeah.
about nothing. I sat and watched for 3+ hours a
Yep.
large group of Americans. Now, in the one article that I've really seen that came out after it, that was just an article talking about it, was from NBC, and they estimated from ground authorities estimations about 16,000 people inside on the Capitol grounds, about another 22,000 people on the outside of the Capitol grounds. So, somewhere in the range of about 40,000 people showed up there, according to their stats. Um, and I saw that many Americans, for the most part, walking around supporting the Second Amendment, uh,
Yep.
calling out the governor and the Democrats there that were making these legislative moves, and a lot of there's not going to be any violence. We don't. This is not about violence.
Yeah.
This is about standing up for gun rights. I saw thousands of people there with guns, armed with guns, on the outside of the Capitol grounds, and not one bit of violence.
Yep.
And it was amazing how loudly that simple statement rang out
Yeah.
to me. That with so many guns around, not a bit of violence. None of those guns jumped up and started shooting people.
It's crazy, right? Like they didn't just suddenly just start mowing people
I
down.
I
It's
didn't
so
see
weird.
I didn't
Who
see
would have thought
one gun manufacturer there blowing
it's
people's
killing
heads
people?
off.
Right.
Right?
It's insane. It's almost like, people have respect for other people, especially when there's a lot of guns around.
Now,
It's
there
holy
was
shit.
there was a lot. Now there was a lot of ups and downs on streams though, on YouTube particularly,
Yes.
right? A
Yeah.
lot of people felt like they were getting shut down, and it wouldn't be surprising if they were. People were saying that their GPS there at the Capitol grounds wasn't working.
Yeah.
Apparently, there was a report put out that there were military training exercises going on nearby, and because of that, they do things like that with jamming, things like that, whatever.
Uh huh.
Um,
Yeah. Me too.
they, but you know, now I will say this: I can totally see YouTube trying to shut down streams. A couple of people posited that it was the fact that because there were guns on the street being people carrying them, that these were triggering stoppages by YouTube. Whatever, people
Yeah.
have videos with guns all the time, just not in crowd scenes like that. So I don't know. I doubt that that's a valid reason. I will say that one
It's
thing
not.
that did cross my mind is when you have that many people in such a localized area. Again, remember, cell towers are not that, they don't put a bunch of them close together.
Yeah.
And you have that many people, and of course, this was a massive streaming event. You had probably had so much
Yeah.
bandwidth going on. Now, it could have caused problems with the media towers. I don't know from a cellular
That
tower
was
standpoint how they distribute the bandwidth and how much they can handle. So I don't, the technicals there. Um, I'm not trying to say that that's the reason, and the YouTube's not at fault for what they were doing. I'm just saying, there's factors that can play in that I'm not aware of, or that I'm guessing
yeah. So that was
wrongly.
my original. That was my original thought, but then it was just seeing who was being taken down, and that it wasn't everyone or anyone. It wasn't anyone like small that was being taken down. It was all the big guys. So like it was like Breitbart, it was Alex
Right.
Jones, it was
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else.
Well,
But
yeah.
I think Alex Jones got taken down like twice,
Yeah. So
which is interesting, right?
Breitbart kept getting dropped. There were like two or three times I remember
Yeah,
Breitbart going down. But let's be frank, never went down. But the reason why
right.
I was thinking about it being having maybe being a burden on the cellular towers there was because a lot of the feeds that they were showing coming from cell phones were pixelated, grainy, difficult to see.
Right. I
They
mean that
looked
always
choppy.
happens.
Right.
Yeah, that always
Well,
happens
it
when
does and
people
doesn't
are.
depending on the video you're using, right, or the tool
Yeah,
you're using. Because when Alex Jones was up and he was walking around, it was great. He was walking around with a bullhorn and
yeah,
pumping people up. His stream was solid. What he was sending was solid. So I don't know. Maybe they were using a more production style camera that could actually do a better feed. I don't know. But yeah, YouTube was definitely. I think YouTube was definitely fucking around with people. And here's Henry. Excuse me. Ron Helton makes a good point, and this was awesome. When it ended, and everyone was dispersing and starting, they were actually cleaning up after themselves. I mean, gun
yes,
to
that's awesome.
uh, you know these so-called gun-toting white nationalist, white supremacist groups that were there to cause so much turmoil and death
Oh
and
yeah,
destruction are not litter bugs, though.
yeah. Well, you know
Just
those white supremacists, very clean, they're very clean people. You know.
clean living
Yeah, it's
makes for
funny.
good supremacy.
It's almost you can tell which side is the violent side. Like there was like, oh, the right are gonna, kill people, and they're, trying to oppress people. But they're cleaning up after themselves when they leave. They don't just like burn trash cans and
Right,
destroy windows and leave the place a fucking mess. Do hundreds of $1,000s worth of property damage.
right,
No, they came in, they showed their guns off, they spoke, they chilled, they had fun, they chanted, whatever. Then they left and cleaned up after themselves
right.
as they left.
Now,
Fucking, I mean, come on, man. That's how you do it. That's how you do it right.
now, I people, of course, many of us are going to say that everything got blown out of proportion before this ever happened. But
Yeah.
I have to take the middle ground on this, and I do have to remember we have trolls and idiots out there that were making threats. We know I don't doubt for a
Sure,
minute there were
people did.
people making threats about what was going to happen at this gun rally and this, that, and the other to stir
But
the
wait,
pot.
which one? But wait, which ones were shown? It was like people, like Twitter accounts with no followers and like one like on their thing,
Right, but
on their tweet or something like that. You know what I mean? That was
right,
given as
right.
proof of, look, there's going to be all kinds of violence.
Well,
It's like, no, it's probably somebody who's not even going to be there.
right, but
Yeah.
the point, what I was going to say is, when it happens, you cannot react like that's not actionable, right? So, for instance,
Sure.
if you get a phone call at the police department that there's a bomb in a school, you
Yeah.
evacuate the school, even though it
Right.
may be a hoax.
Right.
So they were
Absolutely.
right to respond in security and things like this. Now, did they go a little? Yeah, I mean, there's been instances in their state. We saw North Carolina. There have been instances where there were violence at rallies, this kind of thing, when there's surrounding guns. So there's a fine line as to whether or not they went too far in how hyped up they were with the security and everything.
Yeah, but where
Um,
does the violence come from?
well,
It's not coming from the right. I'm
it,
telling you.
it but understand, it doesn't matter where the violence is being threatened from. You have to treat it as a threat of violence.
Right.
I
I'm
mean,
just saying when you're giving examples like there have been violence around things, yeah, but not from the people who were
I get it.
organizing the rally, not the people
I
who
and,
were
and I
at
totally
the rally.
I totally understand that, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you can't do a boy who cried wolf on something like this. You just can't.
Yeah.
Not when you're in an official position that has to protect the citizenry, blah blah blah, whether it be from themselves or others. You know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I guarantee if something did happen, they would have taken care of that guy really quickly.
yeah, and that's the thing. I don't
Yeah.
think that the people that were actually there earnestly protesting in the right way would have let violence get to that point. I mean, they were
No.
actively, you could hear them on the street. There were different times in the stream where you could hear people on the street actively telling others, no, don't don't take it to that. It's not going to get to that level. That's not what we're about here. Things like
Yeah.
this, just a calming talk. That's, look, we're pissed, we're angry, and we're showing that by respecting the First Amendment, respecting the Constitution. I
Yeah.
mean, these were constitutional Americans who
And
were.
that's what that little fucking twink David Hogg was talking about. How they're using the Second Amendment to actively oppress the First Amendment, so that's why they can't go to the rally. And that video that I sent you,
Yeah,
that's what he was saying. It's like, dude, no, they went there with the Second Amendment to protect their First Amendment, and they would have protected yours as well. Even you, who want to take their guns from them, they would have protected your right to speak. He's just, I don't know. I guess he's just a fear monger.
I would hazard a guess that the bulk of those weapons weren't loaded.
Probably not. Yeah.
I mean, bringing your guns, that's the important thing. Yeah, a lot of people stayed outside of the Capitol grounds so they could carry their weapons, and that's all
Hmm.
that's the point to having them, is to show that we have our weapons, we can carry our weapons. These are we are gun owners. They didn't have to be loaded, and I don't expect many. I expect a lot of them weren't. They were there for a show of solidarity, a show of support. That's why they had them. It's there
Yeah.
was nothing, and there wasn't even really anything contentious till well after, like when people were clearing the streets and a group showed up. They start showing a group on Let's Be Frank that was coming through the streets chanting. They were anti-protesters. Their group was
Hmm.
called as RevCom. They're
Yeah.
revolutionary communists, which is
Yeah.
okay. Uh, so,
Good luck with that, guys. Oh, Top Feed wants to see my sword. Well, let me just unzip real quick. Here you go. There's my sword right here. Right there. Yes. Yeah, check out that hilt. It's freaking sweet. Nice, good sized blade. About 5 to 7 pounds. I like it a lot. Very happy with it.
It's a good
Sorry, I just had to. I
it's a
promised Tom Frito would show it, so.
it's a good compensation piece.
Yeah. Show Bobs and swords. See, I told you that was a thing, Robert.
Yeah, yeah, those guys are fun. But the other thing that was very interesting about the rally is there was not a lot of mainstream presence going on at the time. So all your big networks, of course, were focused on the Peach Pit in Washington more so than this rally. Um, and I realized as I'm watching it go on and on and on and not seeing a lot, there's a few things that started coming out towards the end from local mainstream media. People reporting that some of them were saying that it was a white nationalist rally, and others that Northam put out something to the extent that there was, it was an attack on the Capitol. I'm like, an attack? Really? That's what you've got to call it? An attack on the
Yeah.
Capitol? I'm sorry. That looks a lot
You would
like
have known if there was an attack on the
right.
Capitol.
That looks a lot like a protest, not an
Yeah.
attack. They the I think, and my takeaway from that, the mainstream media not having much to say about it, is twofold. A, because how do you spin nothing into something? First off,
Well, that's why they did things like uh, Ed was talking about. Did you see Hugs posting the guy with the Barrett 50 cal?
yeah,
Which was yeah. He's like, oh, that's not for home defense. You don't need that or some shit like that. He said some stupid thing.
you never know what you're going to have
Um,
to defend from, though, right?
yeah, I mean, you could have the guy could be a mile away. You guys still
Right.
gotta take him out.
Or,
But that's not the point, though.
no,
But
but
yeah, but that's like the thing. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna bitch about what guns they're bringing.
right,
I mean, first of all, the guy had an FFL. Like he was he's a gun shop owner,
mm,
so he was perfectly legal for him to have that.
right,
So it's not like he wasn't breaking any laws. He wasn't doing anything wrong,
right.
but it was a problem.
See, and that's why I say, I mean, you can't legitimately spend nothing. And then to top it off, the other part of it is that um, at some point the mainstream media realized there's thou- uh, uh, there's so many people out here streaming what's going on with this. How could we ever
Yeah,
hope to attempt to spin nothing into something when real proof is out there all over the internet that nothing of value happened at this except a protest was held that spoke out and rang louder than any act of violence at a protest could.
yeah,
It was beautiful to me that the lack of violence. If they don't address it, if they just sit by in the Virginia Capitol and act like nothing happened, and it doesn't change anything or have any impact. Yeah, every one of them needs to be thrown out of office from lack of faith. I mean,
yeah.
you know, um,
Oh yeah, yeah. It's fucking ridiculous.
Ron Helton says he is surprised that CNN didn't pay something to run around shooting blanks to stir up a battle. Yes, that's true.
I was waiting for something like that to happen. Honestly,
I've honestly been watching the news feeds for anything from CNN. Now, I haven't gone straight to CNN to see what they said about it, but they didn't put
yeah,
out any relevant article because I have a news aggregator that is pulling the top articles that are current, and on the hour ever. Nothing. I'm like, wow. See, even CNN can't find a legitimate way to spin this. Everybody, the only thing really coming from MSM is talking about impeachment stuff. It's just there's,
yeah,
damn it. Uh,
yeah. I mean, and then you had the Guardian was the only one that I saw that put out an article about how it was just what was it, extremists and white supremacists,
Of course.
going to the capital of Virginia. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, and then of course they brought up Charlottesville. You know, they're like, "Oh, it's gonna happen," but
Hey,
they, without saying it's gonna happen, they're like, "It's gonna happen. People are gonna die. It's gonna
I'm
happen. Watch, just watch." And then of
I'm
course nothing.
I'm just gonna put it out there. I have to say that, it might be worth considering joining white supremacist groups now because apparently they're much more inclusive.
They're
Because
incredibly
now
diverse.
some, I guess, our white supremacist and white nationalist groups are now allowing African American white nationalists and white supremacists. They're actually allowing Hispanic white nationalists and white supremacists and Asian white nationalists and white supremacists
Yep.
and standing side by side with members of Black Panthers. You know,
Yeah, it's
I mean,
crazy.
we're talking a very inclusive group now that might, maybe we should consider it because if that's what they were, man, they were Disneyfied.
Which, speaking of, yeah, in fact, speaking of, that's another David Hogg tweet where he said, "How many of these people do you think would support the Black Panthers' right to carry, or armed resistance to the white militias that stole the North American continent?" Answer: none, because they only want gun to enforce white supremacy. It's
Right.
like, okay, the Black Panthers were there.
Right.
Like,
And what's
what are you
funny,
talking about?
what's funny in that little video clip of those
Moron.
people walking up to the thing,
Yeah,
as he has that sitting there, there's at least two non-white people in the group of people that are walking.
yeah.
I'm like, you know, I don't know, man. People need he's got glasses, right? Maybe he needs new ones. Maybe he needs some that are like, I don't know, rose colored. Maybe he needs rose colored glasses.
Yeah, maybe he needs to learn how to lift something heavier than his phone. Because Christ, those I can't get over those like alien arms.
Why don't they call him Twiggy?
Oh, I just call him a twink, but do they call him Twiggy? I don't know. He looks like his body looks like a toothpick with an orange on it.
I honestly believe
Like,
I will say that David Hogg since his first appearance, since his rise to fame, as it were, started, he looks more like a neo-Nazi now than, than a kid
yeah,
who was traumatized by a school shooting. You know,
absolutely. And Seawall makes a good point. So the white supremacists are more racially diverse than the last dim debate.
right,
Yeah,
right.
100% true.
He wears the same glasses as Mackenzie. There's Cameron Michael showing up in the chat. How's you doing, Cameron? So, I tell you, John, I think this is, you know, I know it wasn't, they're not reporting like these huge numbers of people there that were there, but I
Uh,
honestly, I would literally equate this to the when the Civil Rights March on on the Capitol. It was done peacefully for the most part. Of course, much bigger. So of course there's some outlying things, of course, that happened. But they
sure.
led a peaceful march, and it proved that that can make something happen. Now I'm not saying I agree with civil rights needed to be put in, but it showed how the voice of people would be heard and things happened because of it. And I'm hoping that's the same thing with this because it was a it was a highly demonstrative rally to me. I,
Yeah,
I I was moved by it. I really expected that something would happen, that there would be idiots there on either
yeah.
side, because both sides they have their share of idiots.
Of
Um,
course, everyone does.
right,
Idiocy knows no ideology.
right.
Absolutely.
And I fully expected something was going to happen, and it didn't. And so I am moved by that. Welcome to the show, Bound in Accuracy. Did he pop in earlier? Did I see that icon already? But anyway, he says you've grown since we chatted about guns and military. Hold on. Do we know who Bounded Accuracy is?
It might be. I think he might be the one guy that we've had on to talk about guns. When we made some incorrect like statements at one point about gun control or about gun laws, and he came on and corrected us. I think that might be him. Let us know, Bounded Accuracy,
Yeah.
because I think you must have changed your YouTube name because that's the first time I'm seeing this name at least.
Yeah.
But I
So
think that's who that is.
yeah, I've when it comes to the gun debate, I I know that my position on it has moved a little, but I still I still find myself walking that path where I still say to myself, look, gun owners have acquiesced to certain levels of gun control. So don't be surprised if more gun control is put forward, even if it doesn't happen. You know,
Yeah.
if it doesn't, it may not go through. But don't be surprised because the moment that the first door was opened, that is all you need to continue to try and push more things through that door. Now, yes, you'll eventually get to a point where people are fed up, but, you know, what have you acquiesced to up to this point? And put your head down and said, "This is okay. Well, we make our peace with it. This is just how it is." You know, and this was happening on a state level, and that's the way it should happen on a state level. It's going to take something bigger to get it taken care of from a federal level. It is, but it's not going to be done. You're not going to get any success with it violently. Um, the right way to do it was represented today in Virginia, and
Yeah.
that's how you make change. Now, do I think that the constituents in Virginia have a right to stand up and say we no longer have faith in our governor and demand that he step down from office? Yeah, and you're purely within your
Absolutely.
rights to do that, and he totally has to. I mean, that's something that can be done, and I think they should. They're
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing about the politicians. They need to remember that they're public servants. They're not like public lords. They're not in charge, right? They are here to serve the public, not to control it.
right.
That's something that they need to remember.
And Ron Helton says he has surrendered nothing, nothing. And I'm like, well,
Pilgrim.
you
Yeah.
know, it again. It goes to my, you must sacrifice liberty for freedom. You want the freedom to carry a gun. You have sacrificed the liberty of getting a gun without a background check, right? You make a sacrifice, and we have we. How long have background checks been in place?
I don't know. I don't
Right.
know exactly, but I mean, I don't know.
It's a
That's a tough one for me because
it's a
obviously
tough.
that's an infringement.
Right, it is. It's a tough pill to swallow, but again, a large majority of gun owners are okay with background checks because of the fact that there is a certain amount of guns that are kept out of the wrong people's hands from background checks. Criminals are caught through background checks. Different things happen from background checks. So as I said, we make our peace with it and we accept it. Do we try and get that removed? No, because the leadership keeps throwing other things that they want to try and make happen to so we can't dig down deep enough to go repeal enough and get back to these base levels. That's what's going to happen. I mean, you're going to have to find some way to get those legislations removed.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I mean, if hopefully this one in Virginia will spark more. That's my hope. Is that there'll be other places throughout the country where that happens, and hopefully just as peacefully.
and Helton says that doesn't mean we should tolerate it anymore, and we shouldn't tolerate any more large government. No, you should not
Right.
tolerate it, and that means that you are actively pursuing the right votes. That we're also doing, if we want these changes to happen, we have to do things like attack term limits. This is something that I really believe that more American citizens should get behind. If enough constituents are for it, then the representatives won't have a choice but to do something about it. And I don't think that voice is large enough. But I do believe term limits are the key to decreasing the size of government. Because the longer they're in office, the more they pool power. They will
Yeah.
continue to pool power, but if they, they can be more focused on doing their job, knowing that they have a shorter time frame, knowing that they only have a set amount of time that they can do really legitimate things in.
And yeah, Siwa's saying over here, it happens in Texas every day. You know how many people open carry in Texas? Funny story about that. When Count Dankula said when he was over here in the U.S., he went to Texas. Said he went to a gas station and there were three people in line who all had guns on their hips.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he expected to feel like threatened or not not safe there, but he said suddenly he just felt extremely safe
Right.
because if he knew that if anything happened in that gas station, there were three guys there who would help him take care of it or keep him safe, I guess.
Right. Well, I
And
mean,
so he's like, that just made me feel like safer than I've ever felt before.
well, yeah. Any
you know,
dumb fuck that walks into a store and sees people carrying pistols and thinks, "I'm still going to rob this store." You are a dumb
yeah,
fuck, sir. Welcome to dumb
yeah.
fuckery.
Well, I mean, the
You're an
thing
idiot.
is, Dankula's from Scotland, so they don't really have that. They don't have. I mean, I think they can still buy guns technically, but it's not an easy process, and there's lots of restrictions and stuff. So it's just not something that you really see around. And so, like to go to Texas first of all, it's a huge culture shock, obviously.
Right.
And then so just yeah. Oh, he said. Oh, Steve said it was actually six. Whatever. Like I don't have the numbers in front of me,
Now,
but yeah,
Helton says voting is the entire problem with the destruction of individual liberty. I don't have the right to dictate the majority's lives, and they should not decide how an individual defends oneself. I can agree with
yeah,
that. I can agree with that. The only cast of that is it, it's the system we have set up. It's the way the system is structured. That yeah, the majority does get to speak, or the vocal minority tends to get these voices heard. But I really have to ask, okay, when you have a representative who is in Washington for your state, how many people in that state actively lift up and respond to that? I worry that too many people tune out to the nitty gritty that goes on and then just focus in for a short period of time right before there's going to be a vote
huh.
on who's going to be in office. What's that?
I was reading the quote that Ron Helton put down there: "An armed society is a polite society." Robert Heinlein. I didn't know that was actually him. Interesting. Because I've heard the phrase before, but I never knew it was Robert Heinlein, who is one of my favorite philosophers. He's awesome.
Now,
But I didn't know that was him actually. Interesting.
um, Helton says he says then the system must be dismantled. Now, I I don't know about full dismantling of the system, but I do believe that an overhaul of the system could achieve a very positive effect. Um, like I said, term limits. And I honestly, I'm tired of fucking representatives living in Washington. They spend all their time in Washington. They spend so little time in their states. Now
Yeah,
there's a handful, if I'm not mistaken. It's been pointed out to me that there are a few handfuls that like actually, a few of them that'll go back to their states and spend some time in their states, but most of them don't. Most of them are armchair quarterbacks, and
yeah,
they have a group of people who look at their Twitter feed and this, that, and the other, what people are saying, and then give them some nutshelled opinion about what the people are saying, blah, blah, blah. They're not in touch with their people. And I think that needs to
right.
be a requirement. Shorter term limits or shorter terms and a requirement that you live in the state. Go to Washington to work when you need to. You're in your home state working outside of that. You need to
Yeah.
be in there with your people because that is
If
exactly
anything, they should do what they should be required, in fact, to do what city councils do and host like open forums for citizens, their the people that they are representing, to come up to them and air out their grievances or compliment them if necessary. Whatever it is that they want to say, they get to come up and give them what for, basically.
right.
I
They have
think
a
that would be awesome.
they have a job, right? What they're doing is their job, right?
Well, not only
It's
that, but they had to look at the person's face that they're screwing
well, right.
over
Well,
every day that they're in Washington,
right.
and they get to tell them, "You're screwing me over, and
Well,
here's how." And
right.
why?
Well,
Like, yeah,
what I was gonna say is, they have a job, and every job should
yeah,
have a job description. So these are things, what's wrong with requiring that, representatives in Washington must have one statewide, you can do it by webinar, you do it on the web, but
mhm,
a town hall in your state once a month. 2 hours in a night, three
yeah,
hours in one night out of the month, where you sit down and you are listening to people in your state
yeah,
talking about issues, because the people that are paying attention to what you're doing in Washington, you know, their voices are not going to be heard in the din of all the other social media bullshit that gets posted,
right.
right? And you're right. Yes, you need to be face to face with these people. You need to
Yeah,
hear
I'm
from.
not going to talk about doing like a Twitter thing or whatever. No, face to face. You have to. I mean, you have to be able to face the people who represent you and be faced by your constituents.
Because once upon a time, back in the early days, the founding fathers, when they set this country up. That
Hmm.
was how things were done. You were face to face because it was how you had to communicate with people, right?
Yeah,
You didn't
yeah. He
have
lived
a
right down the street from you.
right.
Yeah, I mean,
You
yeah,
you didn't have you didn't have 100 different ways to avoid talking to someone.
yeah,
You've got all these different forms of communication that allow you to not actually interrelate with people anymore. It's a very weird irony. But yeah, it's you were face to face with people. That is why a
yeah,
representative democracy or a representative republic works back then, right? That's
yeah,
why you can set that up, because of course, you're not thinking at the time, well, one of these days this is not gonna work, because there will be so many ways to avoid conversations. The population is going to be too big, and
yeah.
everything that's happened since then. They had no idea, right? Um,
Hmm.
but that's what it was about. And these fuckers, no, they don't listen to us. They don't hear us.
They don't
Um,
need to.
they wind
That's
up
the
hear
problem.
they wind up hearing the vocal minority on both sides. You know,
Hmm.
um, Ron Helton's, excuse me, what did he say? Yeah, he agreed. I agree with this. Modern communications member of Congress could perform their duties from their states. It's absolutely true. Seawall says maybe
Yeah,
congressional pay should be directly tied to the median income of the areas they represent.
I like that idea.
That's not a bad idea either,
Yeah.
right? You would think that would make like somebody from Illinois, right, where your major city Chicago is in the shitter. That might make you stand up and take a look at what your salary's all about, right?
Either that or people will not want to represent those areas. So I mean that could also be an issue.
Ron Helton says seawall, and we will become exactly like the UK if we continue to allow the government to dictate individual choices of freedom. That
Hmm.
is true. Members of
Yeah.
Congress have a job, but they don't know how to read. The Bill of Rights is a limit on the government, not the people.
Yeah.
They have flipped the power to the government. Time to disband. Yeah, but
Well, I'll say this: I'm not advocating for anarchy or taking out the government, but I'm not going to shed a tear if it happens.
well, I will say this. When I think about the government disbanding, I think about the parts of it that are necessary. So, for instance, the military for the
Yeah,
protection of this country. Now, we could attempt to say that the states would band together and support a national military in place of the federal government doing, but I think that's a stretch to think that that would be done properly, effectively,
well,
or
also,
efficiently.
well, I mean, think about it this way, though, right? So let's say several states get together and form up, a military between them, right? Well,
Right.
someone's got to oversee that. Someone's got to oversee, like be a liaison between all the different states that are doing that.
Right, like Angela Merkel.
You No, what I'm
I'm
saying is
just
you've just
kidding.
created a federal government by doing that.
Well, right.
You know what I mean? That's the problem with anarchy is no matter what, even if we had just state governments and no federal government, they're going to end up creating their own federal government. It might not be called that. Certainly won't be as powerful, but it will still be a federal government.
Right. Ultimately, we have to have a referee, right? I mean, there's got
Mm-hmm.
to be some referee in the picture when you've got 50 states that you're telling them you can make your own rules at the state level. But those things are going to clash. It's going to constantly clash when we get into interstate commerce, when we get into interstate travel, things this, that, and the other. Oh, well, you can't do this in our state, even though 50 feet over there on the other side in your state, you can do that. Like you have to change. You know, Now, it might be a little extreme, but still, you have to have a referee. And the national security is important to me that our government
Yeah,
provides. I mean, I think that's a necessity, especially in this day and age. We have to have something there to function as an impediment to the global dynamic. A preventative measure. Um, Seawall says, not if we shatter the system into multiple small pieces and lock them to a max size via amendments require massive polarity, majority of support to change. Ron says the point
I
is
think he means plurality.
plurality. Oh,
I
okay.
think that's what he means.
Okay. The point, Ron says the point is that the majority should never dictate to the individual how to live unless a person is causing
Yeah,
a hazardous condition to others, and that person should not be deprived of liberty. Um,
100%.
yeah, and of course, when you say something like that, I get it, but now every time you throw unless, right, that
Yeah,
opens up a
unless
gray that
they're
opens that gray area
well,
between
no, I mean
black and
unless
white.
yeah, unless they're violating someone else's rights.
Right, which comes down to okay, we have to decide: did this violate rights? Did it not? We start getting into this
Right.
gray area, which is what we see in the justice system these days.
I mean, it's
Two
pretty
people
simple. Is
two
there?
people commit a murder, one goes to jail, one gets off on gray area bullshit. You know,
Well, I mean, no. I mean, it's usually pretty simple. It's is there a victim? If yes, jail. If no, you're fine.
yeah, but that's what I said. I mean, we see this in our justice system, what the gray area has become in all sorts of ways. It's not as cut and dried as that. I mean, and getting to that point would be absolutely difficult, if not impossible, I would say. Um, you know, First off, you've got to determine if the person was a victim. And therein begins to be subjective slash objective points of view coming into play.
Well, I mean, a victim is there any harm to either himself or his property?
But was there intent? Or was it incidental? Was there malice? Was there motive? Was
Yeah, those are things that you have to determine.
was the witness credible? you know, I mean,
Well, witnesses are almost never credible because memory is extremely faulty
yeah. See,
and
there's
prone to suggestion.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I
and
mean,
bounded accuracy said we are correct on all thoughts, fellas. Good memory. I think he's referring to what we said before about who he is.
right.
So,
Uh,
pretty sure.
Ed says what's worse than living in Washington is people like Cortez, who's never been back to New York. In NY
NY14, the district that
Oh,
she
NY14 is
represents.
currently riding on the Bernie bus around the country.
But wait, so I'm pretty sure she
Bernie's,
has been back.
yeah.
I know she's been back. I know for a fact that she has. Because she's gone to like that community garden or whatever that's near where she lived over there, and she's like live streamed from there with people around. So to be
Well,
fair to her, she has gone back. I don't know how many times or how often, but she certainly has.
well, and something I have to say about the people that are sitting in Washington that get elected, um, you know, most of the time, if there's a shithole in elected in Washington, you know, sometimes yes, they're going in a different direction than they promised during their campaign and what they represented to their people. But the other times, those people were put in by people that listened to what they said and put them in office. Yes, some were voting on party lines, but others wanted that
Yeah,
person in office. So, you know, we have to we have to think about the population, the citizenry in a certain area. You know, is that really what they wanted? Is that the person they wanted in Washington? So whether they're
Yeah,
communicating on a regular basis with their constituents, is that voice that we're hearing out of Washington what the constituents really wanted in the first place to go in? It's like, you know, really somebody elected this person to be in Washington? I mean, and you can watch shit that goes on in Washington and go, that dumbass got elected. So
yeah,
what does that say about the citizenry that's electing them? The
yeah. Usually uninformed voters or people who vote just because the D on the name or even the R on the name.
Right. So
People vote party lines and such.
So Ron says the states could elect a military commander to direct the defense of the collected states and then decide the funding. We really don't need a strong central government. Well, but
Yeah,
again, you get into a point where here we are. We have to elect an official to lead the military. So right there, we have to put somebody into an overseeing place as a referee or whatever the case may be. When and he says there is no reason to have a Congress that continually passes laws that destroy individual liberty in order to pick winners and losers. I agree. We don't need a Congress like that. But that
yeah,
doesn't mean we don't need. That's when we get into this checks and balances thing. So, we have 50 states. If we didn't have a centralized federal government, or
yeah.
the question of global politics, global dynamics comes into play. I mean, imagine that there are 10 states in America that are all like, no, we need to go to war with this country, but there's 40 states that are like, no, we don't want to go to war, but we don't have anybody to make that decision for all of us at once. That it will listen to the voices, whatever, and
Right.
then 10 states drag 50 into a war because we're all
Well, that's the
America.
thing. That's the thing, right? Was the intent, the purpose behind not having a standing army, which was our original
Right.
plan. Um, that was so that one, we could not have an offensive war like we have in the past. It was to be only purely defensive, which is why you would have militia, and the militia would be drawn up in the event that we got invaded. So that's the thing is the state militias, and in fact they had this problem during the Revolutionary War, where the militias from one state would not cross over into another.
Well, right.
They said no, this is as far as we're going. Sorry, you're gonna have to hook up with these guys over there. They had the Continental Army, of course, but they always hooked up with the militias
Right.
wherever they were. But it's because the other militias wouldn't follow them out
Right.
of their lines, so out of the border. So that's how it was intended to be.
So when we so think of let's look at something different. Let's look at it from an economic standpoint. So when we talk about global trade, trading with other countries,
Hmm.
how easy is that without a centralized government, without a federal government that has some overarching policies on
Well, that's the thing.
goods?
That is something that falls under the power of the federal government.
Right.
It's foreign trade, any kind of you know, foreign policy or foreign trade, whatever it is, that does fall under the purview of the federal government.
Um, so yeah, I mean, imagine without. I'm trying to imagine what trade with other countries, what foreign trade would look like if we're talking about 50 individual states able to make their own decisions and determinations on foreign trade, and especially when you're talking about foreign trade that's got to come through port cities and make
Yeah,
its way to states in the heart of the country who have
right. So
no access in that way.
right. So again, that does all fall under the purview of the federal
Right.
government.
That's what I'm saying. So if the federal government wasn't there, if we look at this disbanding of the federal government, take that out of the picture, that becomes a shit show, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so these are areas where I think that it's necessary to have that referee. What we have to do is we have to figure out a way to keep them from being able to take more power by starting to cut back on the power that they actually have. And, again,
Which actually, interesting fun fact. I'm not sure. I don't think it was you who told me this, but I have a feeling it was my dad. But Alabama and Mississippi have that little sliver of land on to their south that actually touches the Gulf of Mexico. You know what I'm talking about?
the sliver of where that touches New Mexico.
Sliver of land. There's like a small sliver of land that touches the Gulf of Mexico. I'm trying to think of no, that's not what it was. Oh man, I can't remember why. I can't remember what it was that it's like this little like piece of land right there.
Uh huh.
Um, Either that or it touches the Mississippi River. I can't remember,
Okay.
but it was due to so that they can have a port there.
Mm.
That was the point of it. Let me bring up a map real quick because now that's going to bother me because I know that they do border the Gulf of Mexico.
Um,
Uh,
yeah, and while you're doing that, Ron says all the
yeah.
states would have to agree not to make trade deals. Trade deals are not free trade. We need to let everyone freely trade with whomever they want, which is fine. Again, I, I I'm
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
I'm for that. But imagine the costs of goods for states in the heart of the country that if they're trading, trying to get goods in from another country, how many states it's got to pass through. And I'm no idiot. I know how commerce works. Everybody is going to want a piece of that pie as it comes through, or in some way, shape, or
Yeah.
form. You've got to, it's got to cost you more to get goods into the heart of the country than being in a port city where they just come in on a boat and immediately can be distributed to the populace from there. It's
Yeah.
there's things that go on even with free trade that are going to make it more difficult in certain areas. It's or at least unless I'm not seeing something that would make that feasible.
But
Um,
yeah, I was right. It was Alabama, Mississippi. Because if they didn't have that sliver of land to their south, it would be they would be landlocked by Louisiana and Florida.
oh yeah, I know. Okay, yeah,
Um, yeah, yeah, and so the reason being is so that they could have a port city and be able to bring bring in stuff from other places.
right.
I thought that was interesting that they did that.
Um, now, show me, show me on seawall where the Gulf touched to. Nice.
He doesn't have one.
Oh my god. Uh, and Ron says, it says I
And
can no
also,
longer.
hang on, bounded accuracy. We
Oh,
didn't start with the Navy. We didn't have a Navy for a while until Congress commissioned 6 frigates. Those were the first ships in our Navy. We just had like privateers and merchant ships that we begged to become privateers, and that was pretty much our Navy. But we didn't have a standing Navy for the first, I think, 15 years. I can't remember the date. I'm terrible with dates. I spoke way too much weed, allegedly. Um,
yeah, because
but
during the Revolutionary War, we didn't have a lot of our own personal ships.
yeah, they were just personal ships. And the
Well, I
French
mean,
didn't
we didn't
help
have
out
like a
quite a bit.
navy out there doing
Right.
anything. These were personal ships and things like that. And then we had the French were helping with ships, etc. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we had privateers, so
land
we paid people.
we were more land battle capable during the Revolutionary War than
Yeah.
seaworthy, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Helton
Um,
says,
I've actually got
"Oh, go
I've
ahead."
actually got a book about that, about the founding of the U.S. Navy. It's called Six Frigates: The Founding of the U.S. Navy. Very good book. I recommend it. It's
Pretty
awesome.
pretty cut and dried what it's about.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
I like titles like that, um,
Yeah.
as opposed to something like rugged water.
Oh God, that
Man,
sounds like a gay porn
but
for some
wasn't that
reason.
a
I don't know.
great title to just come up with? Rugged water.
It
Anyway,
was.
that could be a cologne.
Oh my god.
Helton says he can no longer be committed to preserving a union that insists on the continual violation of individual liberty. What is the point? Uh, and
Oh god. Would you ever vote for Bernie Bot? That's funny.
Oh, and he does make another point that I agree with. If the postal service cannot fund itself through the sale of stamps and delivery services, then it should be privatized. And yeah,
Hmm.
that they're kind of planning on doing that. They're gonna, Trump is kind of like it, let the post office just become its own, let somebody buy it and do it. I mean, granted, it's not a federal agency. It's not the government. Now the government does. Well, actually, an article I just something I was just reading because I was trying to find out how exactly where they derive all their funds. It's sketchy as to how much they actually get as far as subsidy from the federal government. Mainly, the federal government is enforces the rule that that they have to deliver the mail fairly and on time and blah blah blah. This is what the federal government says. Okay, if you're kind of keeps them on their toes, as it were, supposedly. But yeah, stamps and delivery service, that's the only way they make their money, and they're still going in the red no matter how much online shipping has come on board, where they're getting a good piece of that action. They're still going in the red and failing. So the government does kind of keep them afloat with subsidies. From what I can tell, it's the only way they could stay afloat, to be honest with you, because even with
Yeah.
that, they go into the red.
And
But
Bound and Accurate says, and why was that piracy?
right.
That's right. People downloading way too much music. No, yeah, no. I mean, that's where the Barbary Wars, right? That's where that came in. With the Marines, their first, it's not their first real action because that would have been the Revolutionary War, but the first like major thing.
But
And yeah, it was quite a battle there. You should look up the Barbary Wars if you don't know anything about it. It's interesting stuff.
no, it's
It's also where in the Marine Corps battle hymn, I think is what it's called, the Marine Corps anthem. I guess I forget what it's called now. I think it's the battle hymn where they say, from the shores of Tripoli. That's what they're talking about. Anyway, continue, please.
um, no, no. Ultimately, we're about to wrap this up because
Yeah.
it's about that time. But ultimately, I can't stress this enough. It's you know, today was a good example of how a peaceful response can hopefully make some change. It stands to be determined what effect it's going to have. Unfortunately, it may have a null effect on Virginia, but I'm hoping that it wakes a lot of people up to the idea that peaceful actions can make something happen because nobody's got shit to talk about what happened today. So when we look at our government, our federal government, yeah, we need to overhaul it. Things need to change there, but it's got to take more than just conversation, um, or it's got to take more than just us conversing about it. People need to listen. People need to start getting involved, and people need to demand more from people in
Hmm.
Washington. Instead of we sit around all the time right now and we decry all the stupid shit that they do and we mock them and we make fun of them and we roll our eyes. Um, but yeah, we're going to have to step up and we're going to have to do something. We need to come together and we need to make demands of our government. I really, I don't know. I want to start. I want to start attacking the Patriot Act. I want that gone.
Yeah.
It's past time for that to be gone. You know
Yeah, I'm very
this.
surprised that more people haven't. We haven't had any kind of real protests about it. I mean, people will bitch about it, but no one's really like gone out on the streets and tried to do something about it. It's interesting.
it's again. It's one of those things where we've become complacent with the loss of our Fourth Amendment. We don't question anymore. Now it's just assumed that you know
Yeah.
They know everything that you're doing. Big Brother is here, and we, we're just hoping he
He's
doesn't get
always
a stronger
watching.
hold, right? We just hope he doesn't get a
That's
stronger
right.
hold. Um,
And
no,
Ed's right about this. Redistribute your likes to us. We are now socialist, so give us all your likes, and we're not going to distribute them though.
yeah.
But give them to us.
And Ron, I have to agree with you. We do have a large amount of the population who's getting help from the federal government through benefits and things like this. Um, but again, we've got so many people out there that are asking for these things. We've got people
Yeah,
out there asking for benefits, asking for help, and asking for bigger government. And those are the ones that we've got to actively change their opinion, change their minds, and wake them up to what big government is really about. And
yeah,
hopefully, these conversations are a good starting point. But it's going to take action, and I just hope it can be an action that's not, you know, detrimental or harmful to the people as a whole. That's the biggest thing that I hope for. You know, world peace, whatever. But
yeah.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. The federal government, with the federal government, not the federal government. I stand corrected.
All right.
um, no, no, Cameron, we're not socialists. No, we're not socialists.
No, just give us your likes. That's all
I,
we ask.
I'm just Rodney King, man. Why can't we all get along?
Yeah.
That's what it is, right? All right. So that being said, we're going to get the hell out of here. Again, we'll ask for you to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Turn on those notifications so you know when we're popping in. We are going to be returning again on Friday. Hopefully, I may or may not be here. Again, that may be a show. Ed, our great friend Jay Edgar has said he would stand in my place. So we're going to go
Hmm.
and put all the parameters in place for that to happen. I don't know if this procedure is going to happen on Friday or not. I'm hoping it will. But if it does not, then I will be back on the show on Friday night,
Awesome.
sad and morose.
Yeah,
um,
we'll keep you guys up to date.
it's amazing what a world without health insurance can be. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's
Um,
almost like we need some kind of government insurance or something.
well, no,
Single payer system, maybe.
it's almost like we just need a fucking medical system that's like, oh, we actually want to help people, not get paid by people.
Well, there's no reason you can't do both, but yeah.
Well, right, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
one trumps the other. Money trumps, your
Yeah.
well-being. It really does, and it's sad that that's
Yeah.
what it's come to in this world. Doctors, you gotta love them. That hypocritical oath they take. Um, oh, I'm sorry. Did I mispronounce that? Anyway, so we'll get the hell out of here. Look for Friday night show. That'll be on at 8:30. Then we'll be back again next Monday for another episode of Shooting the Shit. Not sure what we're going to be talking about because I'm guessing the entire week the mainstream media is going to be nothing but full of peach pits. And
Yay.
unless something crazy happens, who knows? Maybe Iran will try and distract things for us for a little bit. I don't know.
Maybe if we ask them really nicely.
Right, right. Send a drone over with a note. A note. Hey, guys. Anyway, so John, thanks for stopping by, folks. Thanks for coming in and talking to us. A lot of good conversation going on with everyone. Keep those conversations going. Talk to people around you. I mean, fuck this shit where we don't talk about politics. We need to be talking about politics, and we need to be talking about how we're going to change our politics. So,
That's right. We're now a politics and sword channel, just so you know.
so that is your job out there, folks, is to keep that conversation happening. Until next time, we're going to get the hell out of here, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.
Yep, see you guys.
The war is